there is a lot to cover. And as I spend time figuring out what is best for you guys, please feel free, to speak up because it's a lot of stuff, and I want to make sure that you guys get the most benefit out of everything. So tonight, I'm gonna just do a short review, and then we're gonna go into some new stuff. And I don't want to overwhelm you guys, but feel free to ask questions. We talked about the triangle of health, and the body being the one part of the call it the chemistry part, where we have all the chemistry going on in the body. That's more like nutrition. We're going to talk about that tonight. The structural physical part, that's from injuries primarily. And then we've got the mind, will, and emotions, and that's very powerful, right? Because what you think is very powerful in terms of affecting your health. If you tend to be negative or have difficulty with forgiveness, I have people go through sometimes declarations, affirmations, because what if they haven't forgiven someone? I had a patient the other day, and I could see she was angry at a situation that happened to her. She had a kidney dialysis situation, and she's been hurt a lot by the practitioners because they didn't care, or maybe there's a fine balancing act when you're in dialysis. Your mineral balance is so critical, and if you don't get the right mineral balance, dialysis can really mess you up. And so this one nurse wasn't listening, paying attention. She knew her body better than the nurse, but the nurse knew better, of course.
Sure.
And the nurse ignored her, and she just swelled up like crazy in pain for 4 days. And so I could tell she reacted. And I go, you know what? I said, on behalf of that nurse, do you forgive me? She looks at me, she goes, give me a week. And you have to let that go, or else it becomes a chain. It can turn on, it can actually turn like to cancer in the body. And so we want to forgive, we want to forget, and we know how much people sometimes hurt. And I always look back to Jesus. He died on the cross and forgave the people that killed him. It's just breaks my heart and softens my heart when I see that Jesus did that for us. So that's the mind, will, and emotions. We can talk about a little bit of that in due time. So you have multiple different causes of each situation. You have iatrogenic causes. Ed and I were talking about, we love emergency medicine, right? In the United States, we love emergency medicine. Why? Because we're on the top in terms of saving people. Emergency from accidents, emergency of having to do surgery, and there's a lot of drugs that help save people's lives, antibiotics.
One of our daughters was a missionary in India.
Yeah.
So many stories on what she was not able to do.
Amazing.
That are just simple solutions here. You go to the ER, they fix the broken bone,
And that's probably why they have more natural solutions, and they have more healing supernaturally, right?
Which is also kind of good.
Yes, exactly.
It's a mixture.
So I would not hesitate to not come to me if it's an emergency problem, because that's where we shine in the United States. But in the area of chronic disease, I believe we have completely fallen short in the medicine world, because we will do drugs and surgery first before we take care of our bodies and tell people to drink water, tell people to sleep, tell people to eat good, tell people to avoid EMS, because they don't get trained in that in medical school. They get trained for what? Drugs and surgery. So let me ask you this. I think we told you this the other day. Why is that the paradigm in medicine, drugs and surgery?
Because it's big money.
Yeah, where do they get taught that? In medical school by who?
Which are funded by
Who?
Yeah, by
Pharma.
the
Pharmaceutical companies. They basically try to monopolize the whole natural or health paradigm, probably the beginning of the 1900s.
They actually closed down the naturopathic
They
schools
did.
progressively
They
over
did.
a 10-year period.
That's exactly right.
Took all
Closed
funding
it
away,
down.
put it into new schools.
And they called us quacks for many years. You were in that time when they called us quacks. And I I was at the end of that time when I first started graduating
How old
from
are you?
chiropractic. Pardon me?
How old am I?
24.
Yeah, you were in that time, weren't you? Because I heard it in my time. You know, I'm not too much younger than you. I'm 59, and at the end of right when I was at the end of the 80s, I was still seeing jokes about chiropractors being quacks
Yes,
in the media.
yes.
Okay, and then I became a chiropractor because I saw all the amazing testimonials of people that got turned around naturally without drugs. So, but the pharmaceutical industry got, well, the doctors, the AMA was part of that issue. The American Medical Association, they were training the students to say bad things about chiropractic, like we're like evil, not, I can't remember what, they're like rabid dogs. You know, I mean, they really told them that if a patient said, I'm thinking of going to a chiropractor, what would they say? Do not go, they'll kill you, or something like that. It was really bad.
Yes.
And they were trained to view us as quacks. So thankfully, 5 chiropractors in the 1980s took the AMA to court, and they won. They filed, and then the judge declared that the American Medical Association was breaking antitrust. Basically, they were saying that we were bad when they were, you know, when we're not, and so they tried to monopolize the system. So ever since then, I think it turned around, and now chiropractic is well accepted across the board. But now I'm going to beyond a new level now as chiropractor, because chiropractors are actually, you know, what do you think when you go to chiropractor? Back pain, neck
Take the back.
pain, yeah, and it's so much more. The first chiropractors did blood work. You know, they did a lot of things that they, in schools and chiropractic, they don't do anymore. So I love what I do simply because I had a mom that died of breast cancer. I was telling you that I lost almost my gallbladder. I almost lost my gallbladder, and now I love seeing how God is just bringing steps into our lives. And one of them is my daughter Alicia that had suffered when she was younger. And I didn't explain this to you before, but I mean, my wife and I, we went through heartache, having to go through what she went through, because she couldn't handle learning how to read. Now she's excelling reading, but it was like pulling teeth back then. And she went through temper tantrums. We were considering actually going through, figuring out if she had dyslexia, doing special testing on her, but we couldn't afford the testing, and it wouldn't have done any good anyways, because we never solved the root of the problem. Does she have ADHD? So we went through these harrowing discussions, not knowing what to do, and then forward until she was 17, which is about 11 years later, we discovered after we remediated our home completely, she made a night and day jump. So that's this part right here, where low frequencies, high frequencies. The bottom line here is man-made technology is what's causing the problem. And that's true with foods, we'll talk about too. Processed foods instead of God's food, that's what's causing the problem. Anything that we do to try to do it, there's great stuff with technology, but there's also harm. And I'm not sure we could ever avoid that. And I don't know that if we would have had no sin, how that would work, if we would eventually be able to do telepathy and maybe move at the speed of light on our own, because God showed us how to do it, because we never had sin in the first place. I don't know how that, I always imagine about those things, because we're going to be doing that in heaven. We're not going to be limited by matter. So, but the man-made electricity, just even electricity on its own, in the wall, can cause major electromagnetic fields next to your bed when you're sleeping. So that's why I love the EMF solutions, because it takes care of all that. You're bringing nature into your home. When we did that, our lives changed. So God-made versus man-made. So we talked about symptoms or disease. It takes time for things to develop. You've got the stress of, imagine this was a cup, the stress of spiritual stress, the stress of physical and chemical stress. It builds up over time in our bodies. The stress of, again, some more physical stress. And then it overflows. You have anxiety, then you have lack of rest or lack of water, bad nutrition, and boom, you turn into disease. And so it takes time. Disease could happen over a period of years, right? Cancer doesn't develop overnight. And I had my gallbladder issue developed over, I was about in my late 30s when it started acting up, and I almost lost my gallbladder. But I see now retrospectively that it took time to develop. What were my first symptoms? Indigestion, constipation, gas and bloating. And then I had skin outbreaks that I thought I was born with. I had it for so long. You don't look at your back until I look at my back and go, I got white spots on my back. And I thought I had them for years. I thought I was born with them because I've had them. And then they disappeared. I started losing my hair. I started getting fatigued. My poor wife, I had resistance towards losing sleep from having babies. I couldn't handle it. So my wife took care of all our 4 babies. I couldn't wake up at night. I would be distressed the next day if I lost sleep because I was sick. And then the icing on the cake was my gallbladder. When I woke up, I started developing pain here, and I started losing sleep, and I couldn't sleep on one side because of pain in my gallbladder right here. And one morning, I woke up and I ate in the morning, and by lunchtime I was so gassed and bloated that I didn't feel like eating, and that wasn't good. I mean, I really enjoy eating, and boom, that's when I decided to take care of this naturally. So I got into alternative medicine. I got into, in addition to chiropractic care, I did several things for my gallbladder, and now it's been about 15 years or whatever, and I still have my gallbladder, and I still eat it in and out sometimes. I have those French fries. That was my downfall. It was my comfort food, oil foods. My grandmother cooked me oily foods, French fries, fried eggplant, fried eggs, loaded with the wrong type of oils. So, I think that when it comes to how we discovered electromagnetic fields, I've always known it was bad. But again, man-made versus God-made. What's the human body? Obviously, it's human body, God makes it. But when you turn into all these microwave issues here, this whole central column and the whole range of hertz, which is our body frequency, to gigahertz, which is this middle one right here. This is the microwave frequency ranges, and then you've got harmful rays. I even can't pronounce this, eHertz. I can't remember what that stands for. And then you got therapeutic radiation. You got gamma rays, which is nuclear, right? You never want to be around that kind of stuff. You have to block that in order to not be affected. But you don't block microwave radiation, or else you can't operate your phones. So this whole area of spectrum in the gigahertz area, between megahertz and gigahertz, and then even electricity is in the hertz range, but because it's man-made, it causes a problem on our bodies. It opens up remember those calcium channels? And those calcium gates on our cells open up, and calcium rushes in at double the amount, 200 times, actually 200 times the amount. And that causes a havoc on our system, eventually leading to DNA damage. So, man-made versus God-made electricity, which is what the problem is. So, it's gotten really bad. In a 10-year period of time, up to 2017, it increased a quintillion amount, which is a 1 million trillion amount in terms of radiation. And so, it's pretty bad. So, what can we do about it? I gave you some action steps last time, and ultimately, if you can't turn off the electricity in your house because it's too inconvenient, then you need to get remediated. If you can't stop, you have to be wired to everything in order for the devices not to be a problem. I got to the point where I wired all my laptops and tried to remove any Wi-Fi element at all. That means that you can't use your cell phone, so I figured out a way to wire my cell phone. I did that, but it's still, I got all the devices, all the adapters, and it worked awesome. So you connect it, you turn off the Wi-Fi on your phone, and boom, you got the speed of a data cable on your phone. It was incredible. Yeah. But you had to have wires in every room, and so ultimately, the bottom line is, if you want convenience, you've got to remediate it with products. I believe that the only products that there's other products that work, I know that, but I know that ours solves the cause of the problem because it's been tested, and that's those calcium doors closing when we use our chips. So I have chips on my phone that's recording right now, and that chip, if you get exposed to the phone that has that protection on it, the chip on it, your body goes, oh, it's not an issue anymore. So you can still use the technology. You can still use 5G. The thing that's crazy nowadays, and I'm just reading more about it because I did a presentation to some doctors on Monday night, is the satellites. Okay, they're low orbiting 5G satellites. They say some companies have 20,000 coming up into the air as their goal. Elon Musk.
Right.
Some companies have up to 100,000 as their goal, and they're asking who gets permission, who gives them permission? The FCC. We talked about that one week. The FCC in 2021 got sued by the Children's Health Defense and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. They took him to court. The judge said, "You lose, FCC. The research is way too much." We were talking about smoking prior to you guys coming in here. How long did it take for smoking to become scientific proof that it causes lung cancer? Probably 50 years.
50 years.
Yeah. And how long has cell phones been around for? 30 years. How long, and how much data do we have now after 30 years that EMFs are bad? More than smoking. But here's the problem. When you walk into this room, can you tell there's a problem? No. You're walking into an EMF smog room. You don't know it until you protect it. So I've told you guys that we're trying to protect the church here so that when we walk into church, we're not being assaulted by EMFs. EMFs are not bad in and of themselves, and that's why there is a controversy and of people that don't believe it causes a problem. Be careful, because that's recording. So there's a group of people, the physicists, they're pretty smart, right? They say EMFs don't cause a problem. Well, they don't directly. The biologists say there is a problem because there is an indirect problem, and we've bridged the gap. We did the calcium test, and this calcium test causes a cycle when the calcium doubles or 200 times the amount. That causes the DNA damage, but it doesn't damage you right now. So we feel that that theory is going to be proved one day, and in fact, we believe that our products have done that because we've tested it. So, but it was discovered in 2013 that the calcium doors was the issue in itself. So there's a lot of natural things you could do. Definitely recommend you do it anyways, but if you're not going to do it, then you need to remediate. So now I'm going to go to a different topic, and this is really important because how do you discern? I love the internet, right? I hate it too. Because why? You get information from the internet and it's good, and sometimes it's not good. So you don't know what to believe anymore. So this is kind of how I discern information nowadays, okay? Number one, does it do any harm? I mean, it's pretty straightforward, right? If it harms you, you know that's not good. Are you omitting something? Like, for example, if the information is like you're avoiding a nutrient, like you're omitting a nutrient and it's causing you a symptom and a disease, that's pretty truthful, right? Because we know that lack of vitamin A causes pellagra. Things like that have been researched out, and we know it's true because we've experienced it. So, for example, are hormones good? This isn't controversial. What does birth control do? You know, it prevents you forming a baby. Well, I know several patients that they've been on years of birth control, and they're messed up hormonally. Because what is a hormone? Think about this. If you and all my girls were living together, the chances are that your periods would sync up as high. That's a hormone thing. Your period, your menstrual cycle, you have them around the same time because it's a seasonal thing. Hormones are seasonal and environmental. It's like if a team of girls on a sport team, they tend to sync in their time of the month because it's very sensitive to the environment. So I can change your hormone right now by stressing you out because I can increase your cortisol. Cortisol is a hormone. So and cortisol responds to all the other hormones. So it's very finicky. So I don't like giving people hormones. I used to give natural hormones before. I want to do that absolutely if I need to. Like, for example, we're coming back to Korea. I'm trying to find my melatonin. I can't even find it. Just to sync up our circadian rhythm as fast as possible. HRT, melatonin, I talked about that. Can you be harmed by taking the supplement? So you got to investigate that. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, but generally, if you take food amounts of supplements and you take the amounts that are designed to supplement your diet, you're going to be fine, right? But if you start mega dosing on one nutrient, it doesn't make sense, right? Maybe you may need it for a couple days, like vitamin D. Some people are so deficient in vitamin D. I give them a high dosage for a month to get their levels high. So,
Just as an example, someone called into a major talk radio station in LA, and the listener said they were taking 50,000 international units of vitamin D daily. That's really heavy. So they must have had deficiencies of some type. They were doing it for years and said, you know, that's cured everything. Well, that's fine as a therapeutic dose if you're low, but the normal dose is 2,000 to 4,000 international units a day. So there's crazy information out there, and we really need to sort through it.
Does the person live in California?
I don't know if it's a national radio call or not. I'm not sure.
Because somebody told me that they live in Oregon, and they said that they have to take more vitamin D because of their weather.
The weather.
Yeah.
And
that
it's
they
in
have
the
to
northern
take.
latitudes.
Otherwise, they'll get depressed and
Yes.
stuff like that. Yeah.
But you can megadose. I mean, you can get sick from it.
And we'll go over those kind of vitamins. They're fat-soluble vitamins, and fat stores in our fat. But the water-soluble ones take excess, so you can take too much vitamin C, it won't be a problem. Maybe a little bit of diarrhea. That's about it. Okay. So, big box vitamins. FDA has taken certain big box vitamins off the shelf because what it says on the label is not what's inside. So that's why you got to make sure that you study the company. I only use professional grade.
What are big box vitamins?
Like Walmart. They've taken stuff off Walmart, Target, GNC.
Oh, like the generic stuff
Yes.
they make? Oh, okay.
Anything. They would test different supplements. I'm not sure if it was their brand or not. It could have just been some.
Oh, so like brands that are sold in like those kind
Right.
of stores. Oh, I see.
Not all of them are good. That's what I'm saying.
Oh,
Some of them
okay.
are good and not all. You just have to test them. But I just stick to high grade all the time. Just
the
to make
grade
sure.
you use is good.
Yeah. And then, people that, one of the things you can do is symptom-wise, they come to get multivitamins from me because they go, yeah, yours doesn't upset my stomach. And a lot of people pour up fish oil. That's because it's poor quality fish oil.
Sure.
It's got the wrong oil in it, or it's just low-grade oil, or it's bad oil altogether because it's an oil, or it's degraded the oil. You have to be careful of oil. It's very, very easy to stale. So you got to make sure that it's always refrigerated. I've just recently found an oil that lasts for 4 years, but it's not an oil, but it's omega-3 coming from sea vegetables, I think it is. And it doesn't degrade for 4 years, and you don't have to keep it in the refrigerator. So I have a patient that lives in the Philippines, and she's doing a weight loss program, and I'm shipping everything to her Delaware address, but I go, you know what, I can't ship out fish oil to you. You know, it's gonna take too long, and the ice pack is not gonna last that long. So I found these dry omegas, and I tried them out myself, and so far, I mean, I can't tell if I just wanna make sure I didn't get any gas or anything from it, you know, so.
Sure.
So they're developing good stuff recently. Okay. So does it seem logical? Is it emergency? For example, chemotherapy, is that logical? Well, there's mixed science with chemotherapy, and we have some cancer patients, and we've had some cancer patients that have successfully conquered their cancer just by natural things, and then we have cancer patients that it was too late. But our goal was not to save their life at that point. Our goal was to increase their quality of life while they were here. What does chemotherapy do? It ruins your life. You suck for a little while. You lose hair, you get all this toxin. I mean, I have a cancer patient right now. She's doing both alternative and chemo, and she's just miserable some days.
Your immune system is depressed.
Oh, absolutely. It's killing all the cells of your body. Try to get the cancer cells. And question mark on whether it has long-term effects or not, you know? They say this 5 years, as long as you survive in 5 years, it's successful. Well, if you die in 6, you're still successful. You know what I'm saying? And what are you doing for those 2 years that you're living longer? You're suffering with your family. So if I get cancer, I'm gonna treat it naturally and just die. If I have to die, that's the way God's gonna take me. I don't plan on getting cancer, but I don't know. You know, I'm just doing the best I can right now. I've had my gallbladder removal. Now, that's a natural procedure that doctors do nowadays. Now, there is emergency situations for gallbladder. If it gets stuck in the bile duct, you are in dire straits. You have to get that gallbladder removed because it could cause it to blow up, basically, literally, because it's backing up and it blows up the gallbladder. And then now you are getting ready to die if you do that. So a stone can get stuck. That's to prevent the storm from happening in the first place. That's where prevention comes in. Optimizing the immune system. I mean, who knows about the immune system nowadays with COVID, right? I heard about COVID right in the beginning of the pandemic, and I got online with a series of doctors, and there's one doctor who wrote the blood type diet, very famous diet, and he developed an algorithm connecting thousands of research articles of nutrition articles to diseases. And he pointed out that, that quercetin helps COVID. I just say, how does he know that? It just started the pandemic. They've done research on COVID before. It's been around before, and you and I can have a long discussion on whether it was planned or not, okay? Optimizing the immune system, huge. I love quercetin, and I'm not gonna talk about that tonight, but quercetin was what we discussed right during the start of the pandemic, that it helps with COVID. And they knew that, and several alternative doctors online, have publicly stated that if you take quercetin, I was taking quercetin regularly for my allergies. And so I already was doing it, but then I go, oh, it helps COVID.
It's part of the protocol for FLCCC.
Yeah, right, exactly, that's the doctor's one, right?
You said quercetin?
Quercetin.
Quercitin? Quercetin?
Yeah.
Maybe
Quercitin. Oh, no. ITIN.
Well, I'll type it and then I can just Google later.
Yeah.
But I just want to.
Quercitin.
Oh, okay. Quercitin.
So one of the other things that is super important is movement. I mean, isn't it logical that if you don't move, you it's like I can't remember the term. Movement is like oil to the joints. There's another term and I can't remember. I'm not really good with famous sayings. But if you move it stiffens. If you don't move, pardon me?
If you don't move it, you lose it.
That's kind of like it, like
there
that.
you go.
If you move it, you lose it. It gets stiff over time. And so there's multiple reasons, but movement is one of them. So if you just move, it really loosens up your joints and circulates the body.
Circulation.
Yeah. So that's obviously very important, especially as we get older. That's what chiropractic is, movement, right? So is it God's creation or is it process? We talked about that. Is it man-made or God-made, right? Do you remember hydrogenated fats? Partially hydrogenated fats? We called that what? Trans fats. It used to be what was encouraged to take if you had heart disease, and it actually causes heart disease. Okay, they changed their tune on hydrogenated, and now everything says don't do trans fats. Well, now we know why. Is it processed artificial sweeteners, or is it whole foods, fruits, vegetables, greens, whole honey, not processed honey, and whole meats? A wise man will hear and increase in learning, and a man of understanding will acquire wise counsel. Proverbs 1:5. Oh, where am I doing here? Somehow this got messed up. Hold on here. The last thing is it objectifiable? Okay, this is probably one of the most important ones, because how do you know you're getting better unless you have a test? I like a lot of tests. Not all tests are beneficial at the right time, but I like blood tests because sometimes it's beneficial just to give blood. Amazing, the concept of giving, right? Giving versus just receiving. But when you give blood, it helps people lose bad blood. They used to do this more often. The bloodsuckers, and it sounds kind of medieval, but that actually has some benefit, but I wouldn't want an insect to do it. Whatever those things called, bloodsuckers called. But like there's a disease called hemochromatosis. That's too much ferritin in the blood. that means that it turns to rust in the blood. And I'll talk to you about this, well, I'll talk to you about it right now. So if you have too much ferritin, which is common after women stop having periods, that high level of ferritin can turn into rusting organs, and it's really detrimental. And what do? You give blood. You know, if that's the cause of it, is just donating blood because it just accumulates too much, then you just give blood. So, but I like, you can do symptomatology, but when do symptoms come? They comes late in the game sometimes. If you even have, you may not even know you have stage 4 cancer and get ready to die in 6 months because you waited to do testing. So I love blood tests. I do cancer tests on myself. I'm going to show what I do so you guys can consider that. So blood tests can determine cancer, determine health. Well, backtrack. Blood tests cannot determine if you have cancer or not, but there are cancer markers that they use to measure the progress of cancer once you've been diagnosed, because it takes a biopsy to diagnose cancer. You have to look at it under a microscope. Oh, you have cancer cells. Boom. How many of you guys are fighting cancer right now? You're beating cancer right now as you sit on that chair. Every one of us has cancer cells, but you're beating it because you don't have cancer. But the diagnosis of cancer is developed over years. And so I like doing my cancer markers because all they are inflammatory markers. So what's the cause of all health issues? Inflammation, mostly inflammation. And it could be for multiple causes. You can measure health, you can measure your health, you can measure hormones, you can measure skin problems, pain problems with blood, liver problems, kidney problems, digestion problems, inflammation problems that we talked about. You can measure vitamin D with your blood and all the vitamins. In fact, I would not recommend measuring other vitamins besides vitamin D because it's really expensive. Vitamin D is $30. That's why you do it. MRI, that's an objective test. X-ray is an objective test. I do hair testing in my office to measure toxins and minerals. Urine test to measure heavy metals. So all those are objectifiable. So here's my my blood. And I just want to point out a couple of things here. Like, for example, here my magnesium is red high. So this is the interesting thing. All my yellows here are within this range right here, clinical values. What's a clinical value? Those are the average values of people that have gotten tested. So who gets tested?
People are sick more often.
More often than not. They get their, oh, you're sick, let's go get you tested. Oh, I've got this symptom, let's get you tested.
So the numbers are skewed by the population involved.
You are more learned than the average population because you've done your.
Thinking as you're talking.
Oh, really? That's amazing because you're exactly right, Ed. You have good logical thinking. Most people don't think about that. They go, how do you get those levels? Well, it's the average sick population typically. So those levels are not the healthy ranges. I kind of streamline them down. So, do you want any cancer markers? You don't. You want 0 for those, and the rest of them needs to be balanced, like right in the middle, away from the edge. So yellow is closer to the edge, red is out of the clinical range, and blue is way out of the clinical range. Notice here my LDL cholesterol went down from 174 to 157. My cholesterol has always been high. We can talk about that all night because this is based on the medical diagnosis of cholesterol being too high, which is 200 or more.
200,
right? I don't know what mine is right now. It's probably going to be close to 240. But what is cholesterol?
Is it a good cholesterol or bad cholesterol?
It depends. So if you combine a bad cholesterol with a sugar, it becomes hugely a problem. That's why I recommend ketogenic diets a lot, basically focusing on low carbs and minimum protein in vegetables. Lots of vegetables, minimum protein, so that you don't combine the processed foods with the bad fats. So LDLs can be bad if they combine with a sugar and it turns into a sticky substance. If you can put sugar and fat together, imagine that sticking on your calcium, on the walls of your arteries, and it joins with minerals. Now you've got a hardening of the arteries. That's what causes clogging of the arteries and strokes and heart attacks. So backtrack to what is cholesterol. Cholesterol is a necessary ingredient for your body. What does cholesterol make? It makes all your hormones. What's some of your hormones? Testosterone, huge for males. Estrogen, even men have estrogen, but a little less amount. All the sex hormones are made with cholesterol. Cortisol is made with cholesterol. Who knows what that is?
It's the adrenal glands.
Adrenal glands. And that controls what? Inflammation, anti-inflammation, stress management. Don't you want that? In fact, they've done studies on people that have too low of cholesterol and their mortality is higher. Okay, so I'm in disagreement with the numbers. 200 is fine, 230 is fine, 260 is fine. When I get concerned is when it starts getting maybe about 330 or more. But I use all the markers. See, this is why I don't just use one. I want to look at my other markers. Let's look at my inflammation markers.
I'm not sure about the timeline, but I think it was about 20 years ago, I went to a traditional doctor for a little while, and he wanted to put me on meds that would bring it down to, say 110, 120.
Oh my goodness, that's so crazy.
And sure enough, about 3 years later, that was taken off the market because it was causing heart disease.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Vioxx is the common example of that. Have you ever heard of Vioxx?
Yes,
It's for joint pain, arthritis.
yes.
They knew in their pre-studies that it was causing heart attacks.
Side effect, right.
Heart attacks and strokes. Thousands of people died, and they knew it. That's the pharmaceutical industry. Not everything's bad, but that was a pretty bad example for the pharmaceutical company. A guy in the FDA got convicted. He became a Christian, and he saw the data. This drug is causing deaths. He testified in front of Congress, and he called FDA a regulatory failure. And Vioxx got taken off the market after probably 25,000 to 50,000 people died from heart attacks and strokes from Vioxx, which is just an arthritis medication. You could use aspirin; it doesn't cause the same problem. But I'd rather use like ginger. I'd rather use curcumin. I'd rather use all the natural anti-inflammatories like omega fish oil. We'll go over all that stuff, about the specifics.
It just, the side effects reminds me of, all the medication causes bad side effects, and like you were talking about chemotherapy. My cousin, who's in Australia, I found out today that he's in the hospital right now. He had brain cancer and he had surgery to remove the mass, and then he went through chemo and radiation, and then he was taking the pill form of chemo. Well, now it seems like he's having, the cancer is gone, but now it seems like he's having a bad reaction to the radiation and chemotherapy.
Sure.
And so his skin is peeling, like he's in the burn therapy right now because his whole body is, like he has burns all over his body from from going through that.
Sure.
And I just think you have cancer, so you're sick with that, and then they give you chemo and radiation, and that's supposed to make you better, but it just makes you more sick. So he's actually feeling more sick than he was before when he had brain cancer. And so he's in the ICU right now and burn unit and stuff like that, and it's just, it just amazes me that people like take all this stuff all the time and.
People have to decide what they want, and sometimes it may not be the best for them.
Yeah.
The voices of choices are not easily found nowadays.
No, you're right. You're right. The informed consent is there. I think we're the last. Across the world, they're protesting. Thousands of people are protesting regarding the forced vaccinations, and that's not being put in the media. Right? They don't. But there's probably probably closer to 50, 60, 70% of people right now. It's going up higher and higher that don't want the vaccination, especially for kids. That to me, honestly, that's evil in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
The fact that it's causing myocarditis in a specific age group, I think
Young men.
The teens,
Yeah.
the older teens, they have the highest range. Or either young 20s or old teens, they have the highest incidence of myocarditis.
Right.
Think about that. They're not even affected by COVID, and they're being told. And the thing that really gets me is the young kids, 5 years old. What? I don't get that.
They're doing it at 6 months I heard,
It's just
like
crazy.
6 months old.
You know, it's coming out and people don't want it. The parents, I would say 70 to 90% of the parents, I think, I can't remember the exact numbers, but the majority of parents don't want it for their kids. And so anyways, that's another discussion another day. All right, so here's something interesting, thyroglobulin, what is that? That is,
Sounds like a blood thing.
it is an autoimmune condition called Hashimoto's.
Oh,
And I got it.
you have
This
it?
wasn't no, it's easily controllable, but I never thought I would have had it, but I think it was because of taking, too much grains, too much processed foods. I mean, I eat processed foods sometimes, you know, but I go, oh, it's time for me to detoxify, avoid all, you know, and then it went back down. But I have people in their 200s or 300s, you know, mine was 1.7. So it's easy to control when that's that young, when that low. So so you can control Hashimoto's depending how bad it is, but a lot of it is diet control. A lot of it is diet. Okay, let's see. This is more. We've got immune system. There's nothing. So I did my cancer tests. My vitamin D went lower, so now it's in the 70s. This is about 2 or 3 years ago. I like to compare things. My BNP, look at that. BNP, I like to do that as a marker because
What's BNP?
it is beta-natriuretic peptide is a marker for heart disease and sudden heart attacks. And so I did it on me, and it was yellow, you know. I mean 45.10.1, and went down to 18.2 normal. So I tell you a story of one guy. His BNP started. He came to me from a referral, and he in the highway he got a aortic aneurysm. It's a big vessel like that. It burst. So he basically almost died. He ended up in the hospital miraculously,
Wow.
and they said that he had like 40 or 30% heart function left. Basically, set your affairs in order. So he came to me, you know, and I put him on just a healthy program, and his BNP was skyrocketing. I can't remember what it was, 300, 400, and then we retested him in about a month, and it was higher, but he's still living. It's been 2, 3, or 4 years now. He's still living. He just followed my program for 1 month, and that's it. He needs it. I tried to get him to come back, but he couldn't afford it. But he's still living, you know. And so BNP is that marker for heart. So
back one step.
Yeah.
What range of vitamin D do you like?
I like 80 to 100.
There's a statistical averages,
Yeah.
and then there's what's best for you.
I like 80 to 100.
Okay.
I like as high as possible without having any side effects for vitamin D in particular.
Sure.
So, all right. This is an interesting test. It's my hair test. So I'm checking toxic elements like aluminum. Notice that my lead right here. See that? It is normal, 0.17. This is your hair is like your skin. It comes out naturally. The stuff that's in your body, all the minerals and all the heavy metals come out of your hair. And so it's a sign. It's a way of saying how are you. What's coming out, and number 2, is it coming out?
Mm-hmm.
Notice that my lead is perfect in my hair, but then when I did my urine test, okay, look at my lead level, it went blue. A urine test is where I take a chelator called DMSA, and that sticks to all the heavy metals and it forces it out my urine. And so, oh my goodness, blue lead, that's not good. Lead is very ubiquitous in the environment. It's very nasty. So you know people that have had probably lead poisoning, right? I know one person has had lead poisoning. They had to do this IV chelation.
Right.
You can do it with DMSA like what I did.
Or EDTA.
EDTA, not as good as DMSA.
Okay.
I like DMSA better. But DMSA, guess what? FDA decided that it wasn't allowed in the United States anymore. So I have to order.
About 2 years ago.
Yeah. Pardon me?
About 2 years ago they made that call. 2 or 3 years ago.
Yes, and so
It was
now
the CMS that oversees all the Medicare and Medicaid. Once they made their pronouncement,
yes.
everybody else followed suit and said,
Yeah.
no more.
So I had to order it from Canada. It takes about 4 weeks. I still haven't gotten it. I just ordered it and I haven't gotten it yet, so it's taking a while. All right, so I encourage doing that to get rid of the hidden heavy metals as DMSA, but that's a urine test that you do at home. So I do a hair test and a urine test, and that is most of the testing that I do.
So in this case, the hair didn't show the lead, but
Right.
the urine test did.
Yes.
Okay.
And most people have lead because it just lodges deep into the bone, and so you have to kind of connect it with the DMSA and it'll come out. Okay, so now we talked about over-the-counter supplements already. Let's talk about something that I took. I think I showed this. I think it was during the Zoom call, but I'm going to go over it again. I mean, as you can see here, this is just a regular over-the-box, regular multivitamin from. I'm not going to name the store, but there's, basically, if you read the back, you'll see a couple different things here: calcium, microcrystalline cellulose, ascorbic acid. They're just vitamins. Iron, ferrous fumarate, beta carotene is good, biotin is good. Cholecalciferol, what's that? That's vitamin D. You got chromium. I had to look up cross carmellosodium, and that's actually potentially a problem. I didn't even know what that was. And then you've got cupric acid, that's copper. Cyanocobalamin, that's vitamin B. Pantothenic acid, I think that's vitamin B6. And look at this one, DL-alpha tocopherol acetate. What is that?
Vitamin E.
Vitamin E. That's actually a synthetic form. If it has DL on it, it means it's synthetic. You don't want that.
Oh.
You want D-alpha tocopherol acetate. But look at this. Oops. FD&C blue, late, number 2. FD&C yellow, number 5, late. FD&C yellow, number 6.
Food coloring.
Nasty
Yeah,
food
that's what I
coloring.
was wondering.
Nasty food coloring. In fact, they had 70 food colorings about 60 years ago. Eventually, one by one, they take them off the market because they were so bad for you. Now there's 9 left. Why take any? Don't take any. You can get stuff without this stuff all the
Why
time.
would they need to put food coloring?
I haven't the foggiest idea. Maybe to make it look.
It sells
Colorful?
better because it looks a
It looks
particularly
more-
nice color.
I mean,
That's interesting.
Yeah.
What?
she loves cotton candy, right? Because it's colorful.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
colorful. I'm letting her have it because she's young and she can detoxify from it.
Sure.
But eventually I'm going to say, no, you can't have it. And hopefully I'll teach her enough where she's not going to have that later on in life. But anyways, so it's nasty stuff, the food coloring. We talked about natural flavors. No, we didn't talk about that. So natural flavors you got to be careful of too. So there's good natural flavors, like from fruits, and then there's natural flavors that you could be allergic to. So you got to be careful of natural flavors. There could be, there's no soy, wheat, peanut, sheep, blah, 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 in flavoring, okay? So that's what we don't want. We don't want the bad wheat stuff, peanuts. That's all natural, right? Wheat is natural, peanuts is natural, but if they include that, that could be really bad for you. If you're sensitive, if you're allergy, if you're allergic to it. So you gotta be careful of natural flavors. Plus, you gotta make sure that they don't have heavy metals and bacteria and junk in it too as well. Okay? So, we know that the odds of cancer are not good nowadays. Do you know what the odds are?
Seems high.
In 1950, 1 in 20. 1990, 1 in 3. 2000, 1 in 2. Where is this heading to? And the older we get, the more chances we're gonna get, that's why I want to be more proactive, Ed, you and I, about prostate cancer, because by the time we get, like in our 90s, there's a very high chance we're gonna have prostate cancer. So you gotta be proactive and take nutrients for that, for the rest of your life. Well, when we're older anyways. So we talked about that. Right now your body's beating cancer. So that's pretty much, what time is it? It is
7:33.
Oh, okay, so we've got, does anybody have any questions?
I do. When you mentioned about the ferritin in the blood
Mhm.
that builds up and causes the rust sort of like rest in your organs.
Mm-hmm.
How often do you have to get your blood drawn?
That's based on the testing. So I would basically do the ferritin check, and then I monitor the first time they do blood work at my office, they redo it in 2 months just to measure progress.
Sure.
So if their ferritin was high, I had them go 2 to 4 weeks prior to the blood test, and then remeasure again in 2 months.
Sure.
So about 2 to 4 weeks prior to the blood test.
So it varies person to person.
Yes.
Sure.
Is there like anything you can take rather than like getting your blood drawn, or is
Why would you want to if you can just get blood?
Well, just
Yeah,
like,
no,
maybe
there's
if someone's not
there's
able
nothing
to
you
go
can
and
take.
do it.
I'm not aware of anything you can take when there's, I wouldn't want to find anything because you just give blood. You know, I mean, unless they're just totally scared. I don't, that's a good question. I don't know of any solution besides giving blood.
Interesting.
Okay, so I'm gonna go to this now.
How about just a general question?
Yeah.
If someone's approaching vitamins, supplements for the first time, they've just been eating food. So what's the big deal with all this stuff? I know part of the answer is getting lab tests and determining what some of the levels are. But what would some of the top 5, top 7 priorities be for someone that's new to supplementation?
Top one is EMF always, because that affects everything else.
Okay.
And the next top thing is eating whole foods, getting enough rest, and drinking enough water. If you just did those things, you'd be healthier a lot quicker.
Yes.
Now the next level of that in terms of supplementation, now does everyone need supplementation? Well, yeah, because I think from the 30s till now, the reduction of minerals and iron and certain nutrients in the soil has depleted tremendously.
Yes.
So you do have to supplement unless you want to take 20 or 30 servings of fruits and vegetables per day, which we can't.
Right.
So I do recommend a multivitamin, a multimineral, I usually recommend calcium and magnesium together, extra, and then I recommend a fish oil. Those are the basic foundations just for living life, right?
Okay.
Because you got multi-mineral, that's how our body sings with vitamins and minerals. And then when you start taking herbs, that's when you do kind of condition-based. Herbs are very condition-based, so things that are really potent, smelling, they're usually good for killing things. Okay, like ginger, turmeric, anti-inflammatory. But like particularly like wormwood, things that kill parasites are very aromatic, and so I like giving those condition-based. Now,
well, a lot of those herbs and essential oils are basically the immune system for a plant.
You're right on track.
That we're able to use as well.
Exactly.
It's wonderful.
And it's wonderful, and I have found a lot, and I didn't go over that with my blood work, that almost everybody has an immune system issue. Almost everybody, because that's our world that we live in.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's either small or sometimes it's really pretty bad. So we have to really keep on guard with our immune system, because that fights cancer too. And so infections is a big deal. Okay, so this is something interesting. We don't count, if you're going to start a diet, we don't count fat grams. We don't count calories. We just have whole foods. Now I can give you guidance on general recommendations, like you got to have a minimum amount of protein, so half of your body, it depends on whether you want to lose weight or not. So if you want to lose weight, it's a different, you have to really reduce carbs tremendously. But even then, you don't have to count fat if you're trying to lose weight. Of course, if no one, can you eat a tub of butter? No one can. Fat tastes awesome in small quantities, so you don't have to have a lot of fat. But they have to be good, healthy fats, because good fat replaces bad fat. So I just stay away from the bad fats. You know, all the clear bottles, we talked about that. Anything that's in the market that has a clear plastic bottle, throw it away. It's bad already because light has entered that oil and oxidized it. So everything that is oil has to be in a dark container because that keeps it preserved and hasn't been exposed to heat. Well, that's a whole other area which you don't know when you're getting something. So we don't count fat grams or calories. So basically, you just have whole foods.
Just have what?
Whole foods.
Whole
So now let's go through some basic foods that I recommend for everybody, okay? So when someone gets on our weight loss program, I highlighted things here for all the vitamins A through Z, okay? And so you can know,
Oh, it's not
and I can,
connected.
you probably don't need to write this down because it's too much information. I'll just send it to you.
Okay.
If I forget, remind me, please. So, like, what has vitamin A in it? Yes.
It's not
Oh.
connected right now.
How did we lose that? Oh, piece of power.
You lost it at the
Do you
beginning of the hour,
Press
too.
the on your remote to change to another input. Basically, I'm just going to go through, I'm going to send this to you anyways. I'll just show you just basic concepts. We're going to go through A through Z. So A is the carotenoids. That's that has vitamin A and it has beta carotene. Beta carotene turns to vitamin A in the body. So you can take beta carotene, which is a more natural version, but sometimes people have a hard time converting beta carotene to vitamin A. So I do genetic testing sometimes to see how their genetic makeup is. Generally, general concept is this: if you take vitamin A, you can't take too much. If you take beta carotene, you can take more. Okay, but it's better to take the foods. So the foods, I'm gonna focus in on things that are obviously whole foods, like liver. Who loves liver? I don't like liver. I hate liver. You like liver? Yeah. Chili peppers. I love chili peppers. Carrots. Butter. Healthy butter. Grass-fed butter. Parsley, kale, spinach, broccoli, squash. Now I took out mangoes if you want to lose weight. So mangoes, any fruits. If you're trying to lose weight, I pretty much have them devoid of fruits for a little while until they can
Because
lose
of
it.
the sugars.
Yeah, because of the sugars.
Yeah.
So here's something interesting. There is the RDA, right, which is recommended daily allowance, that was set by the government, and then there's optimum. Again, it's like that. Is that okay? Is it in the average population, or is it the healthy range? The same goes to with the RDA. They typically recommend too low of an amount for health. And so the RDA for adults, for example, is actually in the case of vitamin A, it's actually similar. So it's about 5,000. I'm going to send this to you, so you're not going to remember the numbers anyways. But there are over 600 carotenoids in the vitamin A family. Approximately 50 act as precursors to vitamin A. So they help fight oxidation in the body. So oxidation, you ever heard of antioxidants? Basically, they're anti-aging molecules that fight off rust in the body. Okay, anti-aging. So a lot of vegetables have it. Yellow, in particular, colorful vegetables have it. Yellow vegetables, green vegetables, and then fruits, obviously, and tomatoes have it as well. Optimal intake for vitamin A is 500 to 25,000 IUs of mixed carotenoids, and it helps fight cancer and heart disease. Awesome vitamin. Vitamin D, we talked about that. Do you know where you get vitamin D from?
Sunshine.
Sunshine, good. What else? The fish family. Cod liver oil, cold water fish. Egg yolk. Anybody here like eggs? Yeah. What did they say about eggs before? Bad.
They were
It's
good,
bad
and they
for
were
your
bad, and the
heart.
whites were good, and the reds were
Exactly.
That the egg yolk is bad for your heart.
Exactly. I love eggs. Now the only caveat to that is, and this is something that you have to learn to get used to. If it's a healthy egg, and the chicken has been recording, and the chicken is
free range.
free range and eating, foraging off the ground, then their eggs will be more healthy. If you have a cooped up chicken like this, that's forced and pumped up with hormones to get bigger and get more fat, they're going to get more hormones, more antibiotics, more growth hormones, and that fed corn or whatever those chickens are fed, they're all GMO. You're eating that egg and you're eating that chicken, So you can tell the difference in a healthy egg versus a non-healthy egg. You know how? By looking at the yolk. So you take out, you break it. Let's go before. So you get the eggs. We get them delivered from Angelo's Farms. I encourage you to use a national local farm called Angelo's Farms. Angelo's Farms. And they deliver it to our door. And we order 60 eggs at a time. And you can leave it out. If you don't refrigerate it, he will say refrigerate it because by law you have to refrigerate it. But that's because they're sick eggs. But if it's just a regular egg that comes out, if you leave it out, it'll last for 4 weeks out of the refrigerator. You know that? So you take up less refrigerator space. The way you know if it's stale or not, the egg, if it floats. If it floats, do not use that egg. If it doesn't float, open it up and look at the yolk, and it's tall, the yolk, and it's dark orange. If you go to IHOP, look at their eggs, very light yellow. They use cheap eggs, sick, full of hormones, antibiotics. Thick and tall is the yolk, and it's dark orange. And then there's risk of salmonella goes way down when you eat it raw. I can't tolerate cooked eggs too much, so I have to have the yolk runny because it's easier to digest for me. It affects my gallbladder. So I've eaten eggs raw many times, no issues at all. So collared egg yolk, dark leafy greens.
That's not for everyone.
Yeah, right, because they can't handle the texture. But you know, you see in Rocky, 3 eggs like that. He actually drank those eggs. A lot of weight builders will do that.
Right.
People that are into raw food will do it a lot. But the biggest thing about that is it's easier to digest. So think about an animal in the wild. They never cook anything. You know, they eat everything raw. Raw fish is very common. The problem is the toxins. But I mean, you know, you're gonna get heavy metal regardless of whether you have, like in salmon. So with salmon, you want to go to small fish like anchovies. Anything that's small doesn't have time to build up mercury. But if those big salmons, you know, if you're gonna get salmon, go to wild caught, Atlantic salmon. But if it's big, they're gonna accumulate more toxins, right? So I do sardines, anchovies, if you like those kind of things. And that, and you get extra vitamin D. Vitamin K, what's that good for? That's another fat-soluble vitamin. Building bones. Vitamin D and vitamin K go hand in hand oftentimes to build bones. And so you can get that in dark greens, broccoli, cabbage, spinach, egg yolks again. And if you have good intestinal bacteria, you know, the colony inside your gut, there's good and bad bacteria, they produce vitamin K. That's why you have to have a good gut. Okay? We talked about the RDA being way off. Like vitamin D, adults 31 to 50, 200. That's IUs. I'm pretty sure that's IUs. It's not milligrams.
Yeah, yeah.
I can't read this. Pretty sure it's IUs. Yeah, it's IUs. So I mean, it's way, way, way low for the RDA. Vitamin E. Good vegetable oils are a good source of vitamin E. That's why you put vitamin E in skin and it helps it heal in the skin. Seeds and nuts. Oops, what just happened? Oh, my battery's low. Okay, well, I guess that ends our conversation. So vitamin E, and then you have vitamin K, vitamin E. I think the A, D, E, K are all the fat-soluble vitamins. There's K1 and K2. Okay, so each of them have the different functions, and you want both in the vitamins, K1 and K2, because K1 is more for, I believe, clotting, and K2 is more of the bone building, but there's more involved, I can't remember. So next time we can talk about, do you have any questions on that first of all? That gets boring when I start talking about the vitamins. But okay, I wanted to summarize the vitamins, okay? Notice all the foods that we chose, you know, that they're in. You know, basically they're just, you know, organ meats, liver is an organ meat. Those things have a lot of nutrients. Like cancer patients love that stuff because it's so nutritious and helps heal their body. I give a thing called multi-gland in my office because it has all the glands. I think it has heart, brain, spleen. There's 5 of them. Adrenal, I think, is part of that too. And it's great because why? What happened when we were farmers growing our own cows, and the cow, was eventually wasn't productive. I don't know how they decided to kill the cow, but eventually the cow had a life, and then you kill it and you eat the meat. But do you just eat the muscle? You ate the whole cow because it was life to the family. They didn't waste anything, so they ate the whole cow, including all the organs and all the tissues and all the joints. The joints have cartilage in it. It's really healthy. That's why you use bone broth. You do bone broth for the joints, and you get all that stuff coming out. All those minerals from a healthy cow are really good because you're eating the whole cow. Bone broth and eating the organs. So I just take a glandular formula because I don't like the organs. So I think we covered that. And then any questions in particular?
Something just popped into my head. I was thinking about the vitamins.
Yeah.
You have vitamin A, B, C, D, E, and then it goes to K.
Yeah. There's an
Do
F.
you know? Oh, is there an
There's
F?
an F. It's more of a green.
Oh, okay.
They call it a vitamin F, and I haven't called it that in such a long time, so I can't remember exactly where it comes from. But
I guess I'm just kind of wondering, like,
I don't know why you did that.
Do you know why it went from one?
I don't
to
know why
the-
there's no
That was
vitamin
good.
G either, from what I can
Yeah.
remember. Same thing with the B's.
And it just goes up to K, right? There's nothing past that.
Z.
Oh, there's a vitamin
Zinc.
Z.
Zinc.
Oh, zinc.
That's a
okay.
mineral. It's a
okay.
mineral, it's not a vitamin. It's a
Oh,
mineral.
okay. But
So-
yeah, I guess I was thinking about that. I said, oh, like, why?
Curious
Just
history.
kind of jumped,
It's a good question.
Yeah.
So the fat soluble vitamins are the ones we discussed tonight. Maybe next time we can go through the B's. But I wanted to summarize basically where you get those from. All the fat soluble vitamins are, guess what? They're from fats, right? From things that have fat in it, like fish, like animals, and seafood, and seaweed, sea vegetables have all that stuff in there. And then some of the dark greens have it in there. And then for the vitamin A is all the colored vegetables. So that's the big picture. So we talked about, and then the only one that's different is the vitamin E, which comes in the oils as well, but you get it from vegetable oil. The moral of the story tonight: eat whole foods. Get your home checked of EMFs, and then if you just did that, and we didn't talk about the natural stuff you do on a daily basis, like get enough rest, drink enough water. I mean, that should go without saying, hopefully. But I heard something today that was kind of interesting, that most people back then, and I can't remember how far back it is, their minimum was 6 hours a day. Now our maximum is 6 hours a day of sleep. It's crazy. I couldn't live on 6 hours. Now I can because I'm more healthier, but not for like every day. You know what I'm saying?
I thought, I took Marty to a cardiologist office. This woman this elderly woman that I help.
Mhm.
And they had this screen that showed a bunch of stuff, and it was showing things about having a healthy heart and other stuff. But it showed like you want to get 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night to have a healthy heart and a healthy body and everything like that. And I just
And you
thought,
laughed.
no, I just thought, who
does
actually
that?
does that?
Yeah.
I mean, besides kids, I guess, but like, I was like, do adults actually get to do that? I mean, maybe some, but it's probably a small amount of people.
It's less and less, especially when you're working with kids.
Yeah.
You know, but when you're, how about you get?
Well, I've been retired for 12 years.
Yeah, yeah.
So probably 7 plus.
Yeah.
And
And kids need more why?
they're growing.
They're growing.
Goodness.
But for us, we need a minimum of 7. I like 8, you know, but it's tough when you're busy. But you have to, it's like anything else, it catches up to you, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Remember Nigel, our pastor?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we were on a Saturday meeting and he was, I think he was running and he fell. And he comes to me and says, "Can you take a look at my knee?" And I go, "That's not good." He got, he broke he fractured his patella. The next week he goes, "God made me down to lay in green pastures."
Yeah.
Sometimes he'll slow you down because, it's not good to rush. It's not good to overdo yourself because it does catch up.
Yeah.
It does catch up.
So if we're not sleeping enough, eventually something's gonna smack us in the side of the
Something's
head.
gonna
So
happen.
You need some rest,
You need rest.
whether it's illness or an accident or.
Exactly. Exactly. I don't know how many times I've been in a rush and I get so frustrated because I spill something. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm in a rush.
Yeah.
It's just never helpful, So, any other questions?
Just in that same area, I'm on kind of a lifelong process of trying to learn how to listen to my body better.
Mm-hmm.
I've been really bad at it. I'm starting to get a little better.
Uh-huh.
A little late in the game, but that's kind of a good goal for us to listen to our bodies.
Absolutely.
What do we need? How are we doing?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that there.
Big strokes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always good to, if you're not super sensitive, it becomes harder. And if you're super sensitive to your body, it's easier, but you don't, not, the people that are super sensitive, they don't numb things out. The people that are not sensitive, they can live for a long time not know anything's happening.
And that glass is probably getting full.
Exactly. And so that's what you gotta be careful of.
Yeah.
But that's where the testing comes in, because when you get blood testing, you can know. I'll give you an example. One guy in my practice, his CRP, which is in my CRP and my other typical, which I did talk about in my blood work, CRP, LDH, and sedimentation rate. Those three are particular inflammatory markers, and they've always been fine with me.
Cardioreactive protein.
CRP, yes. And so and this one guy, the CRP was always blue. There wasn't a huge.
What number?
Like 20-ish.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I said, you need to get checked, but he was focusing on his wife so much because he had heart issues. They never took care of himself, and so his wife finally got better, and he said, okay, it's time for us to take a look at your CRP. I was trying to remind him.
Yeah.
He went to the hospital for something, and he hates the hospital. So he went to the point where his bowels were obstructed before he went to the hospital. And he was pale, and someone goes, "You need to go to the hospital." And he ended up having colon cancer. And the only marker that was high was CRP. I did his cancer profile, and there was maybe a couple yellows.
Yeah.
And that was the only marker. And so it's valuable. Don't ignore it, because it can go up not just with heart, it goes with multiple different types of inflammations. And so it was too late for him. I had some therapies that I was thinking of getting called pulse electromagnetic field therapy, and I didn't have it because it helps with cancer. And so I said, you know what, go to this guy that has this therapy, and I went there with him. And we measured his heart rate variability. You've heard of that before? Heart rate variability? It's a measure of the autonomic nervous system, and we can talk a little bit. In fact, I'd like to end with this. One week we're going to talk about the autonomic nervous system called the vagus nerve. Who knows what the vagus nerve is? You probably do.
It's the longest.
Yeah. Huh?
Longest nerve.
Very good. Not too many people know that. So you've been doing a lot of book work. So it's the longest nerve going to the head, going all the way down to the gut. So it controls your stress response and your brake response of the body. Okay, and there's a third component that controls your environmental responses to environment. So I started finding out about this from a book that I resonated with because he did some of the testing that I did, called the vagus nerve, the healing power of the vagus nerve. And it's by Rosenberg. And the title was Treating Hope for Autism, PTSD, and something else. Those are two difficult things, autism and PTSD. And when he said that, I go, that's very interesting. And so I started reading the book, and he was showing that there's parts of the vagus nerve that gets into traumatic mode. Like for example, if you're in a war, you get PTSD seeing your friends die. Well then afterwards, why are they still stressed out? Because they're not in the war anymore. And they get into a situation that reminds them of something and is a trigger and they freeze. They can't socialize because they go through a panic attack or something like that. So you can do these vagus nerve exercises, which we're going to do right now. And then later on, I discovered a vagus nerve treatment for the neck that is like vagus nerve stretches on steroids. And so I want to show you a couple of those vagus nerves. And I'll tell you a story with with Jubilee and John. And I had them hit us through these vagus nerve stretches at 10 o'clock at night. And they go, "Daddy, I'm sleepy." That was so funny because it worked.
Sleepy too.
Huh?
I felt tired
Yeah.
too after.
And so you can just sit right there normally. That nerve goes from here to here, and where it's accessible is right here in the neck. It's the most closest to the skin, right next to the carotid artery. And so when you turn your eyes in one direction, you're stretching that vagus nerve because the nerve connects to that. So every time you move something, it stretches out the nerve. So that's the theory that why this works. So what you do is you take your hand, interclasp it like this, put it right behind your ear like this. By the way, those points, if you feel the bones stick out right there, you feel those bones, they protrude here and right there, those big bones, you feel that?
Occiput.
Yeah, the occiput. And you put your hands right there, and you just turn your eyes to one direction like this. Keep your head straight, and turn your eyes the other direction, and feel the consistency of the bones. And one side may tighten on, the bones may feel a little pressure, like exert a little pressure when you turn one side versus the other. For me, it's turning to the left. Can you guys tell the difference if you turn your eyes one? Put your heel right on that bone. Okay, and then your third finger's right here on that occiput.
Mm-hmm.
And then feel those bones. Put your heel behind your ear.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Gotcha.
That's it. Now feel that bone. Put your heel. Here, your occiput right there. Put the heel of the hand right behind your ears, right there. You can use your thumbs if you want. You can use your thumbs if you want. So your the fingers around your fingers are more sensitive than your heel, so you can do that too as well. Okay, so now you're going to turn your head to the left, and you can feel
eyes or head?
Eyes, just the eyes to the left, and then to the right, and feel the difference in those bones. If one side is harder than the other, then that's probably the side that you need to do the stretch on, with the eyes to the left. Mine's to the left. Now I have I've done this for a long time, so I'm really sensitive to when it changes. If you can't feel it, that's okay. If you can't feel it, what I want you to do is just go ahead and turn your head to the left and bend this way and look to the left. Don't turn this way at all. And you're going to count to 30 and you're going to breathe deep. So I'll count for you. Keep your eyes to the left. 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000, 5, 1,000. I'm going to count in my head now. I'm going to count to 30. 15 seconds. Breathe. 9, 5, and relax. Now turn your eyes the other direction. Keep your head over here. Keep your head to that direction and look to the right now and do the same thing for 30 seconds. Keep breathing. Okay, now go to the other side, like this. Look to the left, Hold that for 30 seconds. We'll look to the right, hold that for another 30. Take a deep breath in. Okay, so, you notice anything? Are you dizzy? Are you dizzy? Did you notice anything? Were you tired holding your arm up?
I play tennis.
Oh, okay.
I chose. So.
Okay. Did you notice anything?
Tired.
Tired? Did you notice anything?
Got sleep.
I was already tired. You were already tired. Did you notice anything?
I felt like I could fall asleep.
Tired. So that stretching up the vagus nerve, which is the part that holds on to stress. And I noticed I took a deep breath at the end there. Sometimes you'll feel like yawning, taking a deep breath or sighing. That's a sign that you've stretched it out enough. That's just one part of the vagus nerve. Maybe next week we'll teach you another one.
So it's kind of a good thing to do
Every day.
before you go to bed?
Every day. I would do it. I would do it, up to 3 times a day.
Oh, not just a day.
Yeah, I would do it all throughout the day just to balance everything out. It's good for just overall health. So that's the vagus nerve, and amazing things when you deal with the vagus nerve. We treated some Marines, and we did the actual vagus nerve treatment, which is just, you don't have to do the stretching when you do it. But I still combine both. I look and do this, and I treat just because I want both effects. And they felt, I did it in the morning, and they were yawning the rest of the day because the Marines were just over. Now I feel a bit tired right now. They were feeling. They were. What do you call it? They were under a tremendous amount of stress from training. They were overexerted physically, exerted mentally. I mean, they abuse those boys to the point of because they want to challenge them to the point that they can perform while they're out in the field. And they yawned like for the rest of the day after I did the treatment because they didn't know how to relax and rest. They were in vagus nerve sympathetic distress, basically. I could see that your eyes are a little bit tired after I did that. So I feel tired now because I just gave myself, because I'm speaking, so my adrenaline is going up a little bit. But now I was just resting. Now I feel like I need to rest. Is that good time to quit? Next week? Same time, same channel?
Notes.
All right, you guys are awesome.
It's 8:08.
8:08, perfect.